There is a woman who seems quietly carried by life. She is not frantic. She is not chasing. Yet somehow her needs are met. Her path clears, and help appears before urgency turns into fear. Others call it luck. Spirit calls it agreement. She has learned how to speak before she ever learned how to strive. You may have noticed her without realizing it. She does not dramatize her problems. She does not rehearse her worries aloud. Even in uncertainty, her words move gently but firmly toward good. She understands something most overlook. Every sentence spoken is a direction given. Many women pray sincerely and still struggle daily. They ask for provision, peace, and protection, then unknowingly cancel their prayer with a single fearful sentence spoken at the kitchen table, whispered at night, or sighed under pressure. The law answers both prayers and words without preference. Picture the quiet hour before sleep. The house is still. Bills sit unanswered. The mind begins to wander into old stories. It's always hard for me. I never get ahead. Something always goes wrong. Those words feel private. They are not. They are instructions sent forward in time. The spiritually prosperous woman learned early or learned painfully that words are creative. She does not use her mouth to vent. She uses it to set. She knows that what is spoken repeatedly becomes familiar, then believable, then visible. She speaks as one planting seeds, not airing complaints. This is why she appears calm when others panic. She has trained herself not to speak until her words agree with divine order. Silence, to her, is safer than fear spoken aloud. And when she does speak, it is deliberate, chosen, and aligned with what she desires to see. Most people believe circumstances create speech. The prosperous woman knows speech creates circumstance. She does not wait for evidence before choosing her words. She understands that evidence is the result, not the requirement. Faith, spoken consistently, forces life to rearrange itself. You may believe you already speak well, but listen to yourself under pressure. Notice the phrases that slip out when you are tired, rushed, or disappointed. Those unguarded moments reveal the true pattern shaping your days. Law works most powerfully in the unconscious repetition. Another month of careless speech can cost more than effort ever will. It can cost peace at home. It can cost confidence in your children's eyes. It can cost the quiet knowing that you are supported. No punishment is involved, only reflection, exact and impartial. The spiritually prosperous woman does not blame herself. She corrects herself. She understands that correction is power. When she hears herself speaking against her good, she stops sometimes mid-sentence and chooses again. That pause alone begins to shift her affairs. There are 7 inner disciplines she lives by. They are not loud, they are not showy, but each one strengthens her authority. Each one trains her tongue to agree with abundance instead of habit, faith instead of fear, expectation instead of apology. She does not speak of lack, even jokingly. She does not say, "I can't afford," unless she wants to command limitation. She replaces it with words that leave room for supply to move. That is not provided for yet. Language opens doors or seals them shut. She does not explain away her hopes. When she desires something good, she does not soften it with disclaimers. She does not say, "It probably won't happen." She knows spirit hears certainty, not self-protection. She speaks her desire plainly and releases it without tension. She does not argue with delay. Delay does not frighten her. She understands that unseen movement often precedes visible change. Instead of complaining about time, she speaks order into it. She expects things to arrive under grace, in the right moment, without strain. She watches what she says about others. She knows criticism poisons her own channels. Harsh words aimed outward always return inward. so she blesses where others curse, not from weakness, but from intelligence. She refuses to block her own good with resentment. She speaks to her body as she would to a child, firm, loving, expectant of health. She does not rehearse symptoms, she gives instructions instead. And the body, being obedient matter, begins to follow the stronger voice when fear is denied repetition. She listens carefully for intuition, and when it speaks, she obeys without over-explaining. Her words then follow her actions. She does not say one thing and do another. This unity gives her authority. Life responds swiftly to those who are not divided. If you ignore these distinctions, nothing dramatic will happen. And that is the danger. Another season will pass. Another quiet disappointment will settle in. Another version of you will be postponed. Law does not punish indifference, it simply continues, exactly as instructed. But if you listen differently now, if you hear these words as seeds rather than inspiration, you will feel something shift. Your speech will slow. Your awareness will sharpen. You will begin to catch the old phrases before they leave your mouth. Choose one distinction today. Just one. Practice it faithfully. Speak as though your life were listening, because it is. When your words change direction, your circumstances must follow. That is not hope. That is law. She learns first that words are not sounds cast into the air, but forces sent ahead to prepare conditions. Most people speak as though life were deaf, as though words vanished when the sentence ends. The spiritually prosperous woman learns, often through costly experience, that nothing spoken is lost. Each phrase remains active until it fulfills its instruction. This single realization, accepted fully, saves her years of correction, apology, and needless endurance. She notices that nearly every delay she once suffered followed a sentence spoken without thought. A casual remark at the breakfast table, a sigh beneath pressure, a joke made to soften disappointment, these were not harmless. They were blueprints. She sees now that her former struggles were not punishments, but fulfillments. Life obeyed her precisely, without emotion, without argument, without mercy or cruelty. She ceases, therefore, to speak for relief. She speaks only for direction. She understands that the mouth was never intended as a release valve, but as a steering instrument. When others complain to feel better, she grows quieter. When others rehearse difficulty, she withholds comment. She is not suppressing truth. She is choosing order over confusion. In earlier years, she spoke as most women do, honestly, emotionally, reactively. She described what was happening, explained why it was difficult, justified why she felt overwhelmed. None of this felt dangerous. It felt reasonable. Yet reason did not save her from repetition. The same patterns returned, wearing different faces. Only when she traced events backward to language did the pattern reveal itself. She discovers that prayer spoken in the morning is often undone by conversation spoken at night. She sees that asking for provision while speaking fear is the same as planting and uprooting in the same hour. The law does not weigh sincerity, it answers frequency. What is spoken most often becomes law. This knowledge sobers her, it does not frighten her. Power never frightens the one who understands it. She begins to listen to herself as though she were listening to another woman giving instructions to life. This alone changes her posture. Awareness slows her speech. Silence becomes an ally. She notices how often she once used phrases inherited rather than chosen. It's always been hard. I never get ahead. Something always goes wrong at the last minute. These phrases were never examined. They were spoken because they were familiar. Familiarity, she learns, is the most dangerous form of belief. She stops mid-sentence, for the first time not out of embarrassment, but authority. She feels the shift immediately. Something inside her relaxes. The law has been interrupted. This pause, repeated, becomes her protection. She learns that a sentence unfinished carries no instruction. Silence neutralizes momentum. Others begin to sense something different in her. They cannot name it. They only know that she does not escalate panic, does not dramatize uncertainty, does not argue with circumstance. In conversation, she sounds measured. In crisis, she sounds composed. This is not temperament. It is training. Her children begin to mirror her. Where they once repeated her worries, they now repeat her expectations. The household becomes quieter without effort. Order enters not through control, but example. Life responds fastest where there is least contradiction. She understands now why certain women appear fortunate without explanation. It is not luck. It is economy. They waste no years speaking against themselves. They do not rehearse disappointment. They do not explain why something may not work. They speak what they desire once, clearly, and then refrain. The prosperous woman learns to let time work without insult. She no longer says, "It's taking too long." She knows delay is not denial unless named so. By refusing to argue with time, she saves years of emotional strain. Strain adds nothing to speed. Resistance multiplies duration. She sees how others once perceived her capable but anxious, hopeful but uncertain, diligent but strained. Now she is perceived differently. People trust her judgment. They feel steadier in her presence. Opportunities come to her quietly, without persuasion. Confidence invites cooperation. She does not boast of her discipline. She does not announce her restraint. Law does not require witnesses. Results speak without commentary. She understands that most years are not lost through failure, but through unnecessary repetition. To repeat is to age prematurely. By governing her words, she compresses experience. What once took 10 years of trial now takes 1 year of alignment. What once took exhaustion now takes instruction. This is how years are saved, not by speed, but by accuracy. She adopts speech that leaves room for supply. Instead of naming lack, she names provision pending. Instead of naming difficulty, she names order unfolding. This is not denial. It is selection. The law responds to what is named. When asked how she remains calm, she does not explain metaphysics. She simply says less. Silence preserves momentum. Explanation leaks power. She learned long ago that life does not require justification, only direction. She keeps certain phrases close, not as charms, but as reminders of jurisdiction. When tempted to speak fear, she recalls, "I choose my words as law. My speech moves before me and prepares the way. I speak only what I am willing to live." These are not affirmations for display. They are corrections spoken privately, often silently, often before sleep, where repetition works most deeply. She understands that unconscious speech shapes conscious days. Therefore, she guards the moments when attention is lowest. Fatigue, disappointment, intimacy. These are the moments that once cost her years. Now they cost her nothing. By mastering this first discipline alone, she saves a decade of struggle. Had she learned it earlier, she might have saved 20. Those who ignore it may lose 30 without realizing why. Time does not punish. Time obeys. She does not wait to perfect all 7 disciplines. Mastery of one changes the direction of all. Speech is the gate. When the gate is guarded, the city remains ordered. This is not inspiration. It is instruction. Life listens. She learned to speak accordingly. She learns, after mastering her speech, that words alone are not sufficient if the mind continues to quarrel with what is seen. Many women speak correctly and still suffer because they secretly dispute appearances. They say the right phrases, yet inwardly rehearse the wrong conclusions. The spiritually prosperous woman understands that argument is a form of consent. To argue with a condition is to acknowledge its authority. She once believed that facts were final. Bills, delays, unanswered letters, closed doors, these appeared to her as verdicts. She did not realize they were merely echoes. When she learned that every appearance is the after effect of former thought and speech, she stopped treating circumstance as cause. She ceased reacting. Reaction had cost her more years than effort ever did. She understands that life is not persuaded by urgency. It is persuaded by agreement. When she meets delay, she does not demand explanation. She does not ask why. She knows that asking why often strengthens the very thing she wishes to dissolve. Instead, she withholds recognition. What is not recognized loses momentum. In earlier days, she felt compelled to analyze everything that went wrong. She believed understanding the cause would grant control. Instead, it prolonged the lesson. The mind that seeks reasons for failure builds monuments to it. The prosperous woman seeks alignment, not explanation. She notices that most women exhaust themselves by narrating conditions aloud. They describe difficulty to friends, repeat it to family, confirm it to themselves. This repetition solidifies form. She declines participation, not from denial, but from intelligence. She knows that life organizes itself around the most frequently acknowledged idea. When others say, "This is just the way things are," she remains silent. She knows that what is accepted becomes fixed. She has learned to let appearances pass through her awareness without lodging there. A thought allowed to rest becomes belief. A belief repeated becomes experience. She practices a quiet discipline. When something unwanted appears, she names it nothing more than an echo passing through. She does not push it away. She does not fear it. Fear gives weight. Resistance gives density. She simply refuses to assign permanence. This refusal saves years. Most people live entire decades inside arguments with life. They struggle not against reality, but against their own acknowledgement of it. The prosperous woman shortens her journey by declining unnecessary battles. She conserves energy by not wrestling shadows. She understands that time is often extended by protest. When she complains of delay, she lengthens it. When she watches time anxiously, she slows it. When she trusts order, she quickens arrival. This is not superstition. It is observation. In former years, she marked her calendar with worry. She counted days with dread. Now she counts nothing. She knows that unseen movement often precedes visible change. Seeds do not announce themselves. They work silently. She honors the unseen stage. Others notice that she is no longer rushed. She does not hurry words. She does not press outcomes. She moves with assurance rather than force. People respond to her differently now. They do not feel compelled to resist her. Resistance meets resistance. Calm invites cooperation. She once feared that not reacting meant indifference. She now knows it means mastery. The one who reacts is led. The one who responds deliberately leads. She has chosen leadership. When obstacles arise, she does not label them obstacles. She knows that names give function. What is called an obstacle will behave as one. She calls it a rearrangement. Life complies. She recalls how often she once said, "This always happens to me." She did not realize she was renewing a contract. Each repetition extended the term. Now she speaks no such generalities. She knows that sweeping conclusions bind the future to the past. Her faith is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is not proven through risk. It is proven through composure. Composure is faith stabilized. Panic is faith inverted. She notices that when she remains unperturbed, solutions appear without strain. People call unexpectedly. Information arrives without effort. What once required chasing now comes seeking her. This is not coincidence. It is alignment. Others begin to seek her counsel. They say she has good judgment. They say she seems fortunate. They do not see the years she has saved by refusing to quarrel with life. They only see the ease that followed. She understands that many women lose 10 years trying to fix conditions that would have dissolved on their own if left unopposed. Resistance is adhesion. Non-resistance is release. She does not confuse non-resistance with passivity. She acts when guided. She moves when clear. She refrains when uncertain. Timing, she has learned, is as important as direction. She remembers times when she forced decisions out of fear. Those decisions cost her years. Now she waits without anxiety. Waiting without anxiety is action of the highest order. She keeps certain inner statements close, not for repetition, but for correction. When tempted to argue with what she sees, she recalls quietly, "This condition is not the cause. I do not give authority to appearances. What is mine cannot be delayed by confusion." These are not spoken to convince life. They are spoken to steady herself. Once steadied, life rearranges naturally. She sees now that impatience is a hidden accusation against order. She no longer accuses. She trusts structure. Order existed before her request and will outlast her concern. This trust changes her bearing. She walks differently. She speaks less. She listens more. She is no longer hurried by other people's urgency. Urgency is contagious only to those who agree with it. By mastering this second discipline, she saves another decade. She no longer spends years correcting emotional reactions. She no longer lives inside explanations. She lives inside expectancy. If she had learned this earlier, she might have avoided entire chapters of struggle. Those who never learn it repeat lessons until exhaustion forces surrender. She surrendered early. That is why she appears ahead. She understands that life is not cruel, but precise. It returns what is expected, not what is desired. Expectation held quietly is stronger than desire, shouted loudly. She no longer asks life to prove itself. Proof follows agreement. She agrees first. This is how years are spared, not through effort, but through refusal to misinterpret echoes as causes. She moves on without argument. She learns next that desire itself must be governed. For many women lose more years through divided wanting than through failure. They desire one thing and expect another. They pray for good and privately rehearse disappointment. This inner division weakens authority. The spiritually prosperous woman understands that desire, once spoken or felt, must not be argued with afterward. To desire and then doubt is to pull equally in opposite directions. In earlier years, she often softened her hopes. She would say what she wanted, then quickly add a phrase of protection. If it's meant to be, if it works out, if I'm lucky. These phrases felt humble. They were not. They were withdrawals. She was secretly preparing herself not to receive. She now sees that humility is obedience to law, not self-erasure. She learns that spirit responds to clarity, not caution. Vague desire produces vague results. A woman who half wants saves herself from disappointment only by ensuring delay. The prosperous woman prefers truth over comfort. She names her desire plainly and then releases it without negotiation. She once believed it was wise to lower expectation. Experience taught her otherwise. Lowered expectation did not protect her from pain. It merely extended waiting. Law does not reward modest hope. It responds to conviction calmly held. She notices that many women exhaust decades explaining why they do not expect much. They believe this is realism. It is not. It is rehearsal. The future grows accustomed to what is expected of it. She practices a quiet boldness. When she wants something good, she does not apologize for wanting it. She does not justify it. She does not explain it. Desire needs no defense when it is aligned with order. Explanation dilutes force. She understands now why certain people receive without strain. They do not plead. They do not bargain. They assume alignment. Assumption is a form of faith matured. Others begin to notice this in her. When she speaks of plans, there is no wavering in her tone. She does not oversell. She does not hedge. People sense completion even before results appear. This confidence draws cooperation. She learns that desire spoken once with certainty is more powerful than desire repeated with anxiety. Repetition born of fear weakens effect. Silence after declaration allows movement. In earlier days, she revisited her desires daily, checking for progress, questioning timing, wondering if she had asked correctly. Each revisit reintroduced doubt. Now she lets desire rest. Rest is trust made visible. She understands that impatience is a form of unbelief. It says, "I do not trust unseen order." She corrects impatience, not by force, but by remembrance. Seeds do not hurry themselves. She recalls how often she once said, "I want this, but I don't think it will happen." She did not realize she was instructing life to remain undecided. Life obeyed perfectly. Now when she desires, she does so with finality. Not stubbornness, but decision. Decision closes doors to distraction. She is careful not to desire through comparison. Wanting what another has weakens direction. She wants what belongs to her by order, not by imitation. This distinction saves years of wandering. She understands that envy is desire misdirected. It looks outward instead of inward. She corrects envy immediately, knowing it clouds intuition and delays receipt. She holds her desire as one would hold a sealed letter. She does not open it repeatedly to see if the message has changed. She trusts delivery. Others notice that she no longer speaks longingly. She speaks expectantly. Longing waits. Expectation receives. Her demeanor changes subtly. She no longer leans forward in conversation. She stands at ease. Ease is a sign of alignment. She learns that many women lose 20 years chasing possibilities instead of committing to their own desire. Possibility scatters. Commitment concentrates. She commits inwardly before anything changes outwardly. This inward commitment is invisible but decisive. She does not ask others to validate her desire. Validation invites interference. She keeps certain intentions private, knowing silence preserves momentum. She understands that doubt shared multiplies. Doubt entertained privately already delays. Doubt spoken aloud accelerates loss. She practices restraint not from fear, but from knowledge. Knowledge simplifies life. She recalls the many years she once spent waiting for permission to want more, to expect better, to claim ease. Permission never came. Law does not grant permission, it responds to assumption. Now she assumes alignment. This assumption saves her decades. She carries certain inner corrections, not repeated often, but held firmly. When tempted to soften her desire, she recalls, "I desire without apology. I expect without tension. What is mine meets me under grace." These are not demands. They are acknowledgments. She learns that desire does not strain when it is rightful. Strain indicates conflict. Conflict signals correction is needed. She watches how quickly life responds when desire is clean. Opportunities appear without effort. Invitations arrive without pursuit. This is not miracle. It is order restored. Others say, she is fortunate. She knows she is simply undivided. By mastering this third discipline, she saves another 10 years. She no longer wastes time wavering between wanting and fearing. She walks a single line. Had she learned this earlier, she might have avoided entire chapters of indecision. Those chapters taught her, but they were expensive. Now she moves forward without apology, without explanation, without retreat. Desire, once aligned, becomes destination. She discovers next that obedience to inner guidance is the hinge upon which all prosperity turns, and that no amount of right speech, calm demeanor, or clear desire can substitute for timely obedience. Many women hear guidance daily and delay it politely. They intend to act later, when conditions improve or confidence increases. The spiritually prosperous woman learns that delay is often the only obstruction. Guidance expires when ignored. She remembers how intuition once spoke to her in gentle impressions, fleeting urges, quiet certainties that arrived without argument. She dismissed them as impractical. She waited for proof. She asked for reassurance. By the time reassurance arrived, the moment had passed. Opportunities moved on without resentment, simply unavailable. This cost her years she did not realize she was losing. She learns that intuition does not shout. It assumes cooperation. When ignored, it withdraws rather than persuades. The prosperous woman understands this and treats guidance with respect. When the inner voice suggests movement, she moves before fear can assemble objections. She once believed that acting without full understanding was reckless. Experience taught her otherwise. Acting without guidance was reckless. Acting with guidance felt risky only to the intellect. The intellect does not see far. Intuition sees whole paths at once. She notices that guidance often contradicts reason. It may ask her to release something familiar, to step away from security, to speak when silence feels safer, or to remain still when action seems urgent. Reason argues. Intuition instructs. She chooses instruction. She understands that intuition is never dramatic. It does not demand urgency. It offers certainty. When she feels certainty without excitement, she knows it is guidance. Excitement belongs to desire. Certainty belongs to direction. She recalls how often she once asked others what to do after guidance had already spoken. This diluted clarity. Each opinion added weight. Confusion followed. She now knows that guidance given inwardly is not improved by discussion. Others begin to notice that she decides quickly, not impulsively, but decisively. She does not linger at crossroads. She does not revisit settled matters. This decisiveness saves years. She sees now that many women spend decades waiting to feel ready. Readiness never arrives. Obedience creates readiness. Movement clarifies. She learns that intuition often requires small actions, not dramatic leaps. A phone call made, a meeting declined, a door closed gently, a habit released. Small obediences accumulate power. She understands that ignoring small guidance dulls perception. Obedience sharpens it. Each response strengthens the channel. Each delay weakens it. She no longer bargains with guidance. She does not ask, "What if I am wrong?" She knows that wrong action taken in obedience corrects itself faster than right action taken in fear. She notices that when she obeys promptly, life responds promptly. Delays shorten, resistance dissolves. What once required effort now unfolds naturally. Others perceive her as being in the right place at the right time. They call it timing. She calls it listening. She understands that intuition often precedes visible cause. It moves her before evidence appears. This is why obedience feels illogical. Logic follows effect. Guidance precedes it. She remembers years spent forcing outcomes through effort while ignoring simpler directions. Those years were heavy. Obedience lightens life. She practices listening deliberately. She creates space for silence. She respects impressions that arrive without explanation. Silence, she learns, is the environment in which guidance speaks clearly. She does not confuse intuition with emotion. Emotion is noisy. Guidance is calm. Emotion argues. Guidance instructs once. She learns that intuition often comes with peace, even when the instruction is challenging. Fear accompanies resistance, not guidance. She keeps her inner channel clean by avoiding resentment. Resentment clouds perception. Forgiveness restores clarity. Others notice that she rarely complains of being stuck. Movement is constant when guidance is followed. Stagnation is a sign of ignored instruction. She understands that many women lose 20 years repeating the same lesson because they heard guidance once and postponed it indefinitely. Life repeats instructions until obeyed. She now responds the first time. This alone accelerates her life. She carries simple inner acknowledgments rather than affirmations. When guidance speaks, she affirms inwardly, I hear and I act. I am safely led. My obedience clears the way. These are confirmations, not requests. She understands that guidance never contradicts order. It may contradict habit, expectation, or comfort, but it never contradicts harmony. She trusts that obedience places her where provision already exists. Provision does not chase the hesitant. By mastering this fourth discipline, she saves another decade. She no longer circles familiar ground waiting for courage. She walks forward while courage forms behind her. Those who observe her think she is brave. She knows she is simply obedient. Guidance, once honored, becomes constant. She learns next that resentment is the most expensive habit a woman can carry, for it blocks supply more efficiently than fear, doubt, or ignorance. Many women believe resentment is justified, earned through experience, or harmless if kept silent. The spiritually prosperous woman discovers that resentment does not require expression to operate. It poisons silently. What is resented is fastened to the one who resents it. She remembers years spent replaying injustices inwardly. She did not speak of them often, believing silence made them powerless. Silence did not dissolve them. They remained active impressions. Life echoed them back through delay, obstruction, and fatigue. She now sees that resentment is agreement with disorder. She learns that resentment does not punish the other party. It punishes the channel through which good must come. The law does not interpret motives. It responds to atmosphere. Resentment creates congestion. Congestion delays movement. She notices that periods of stagnation in her past always coincided with unforgiven moments. She had prayed for progress while carrying grievances like talismans. Prayer and resentment cancel each other. Law answers both. She understands that forgiveness is not moral instruction. It is mechanical necessity. To forgive is to release the obstruction. To withhold forgiveness is to maintain it. She no longer waits to feel forgiving. Feeling follows release, not the reverse. She forgives because she values motion more than vindication. This choice alone saves years. She practices forgiveness as hygiene. She clears it daily. She does not allow resentments to accumulate. Accumulation hardens perception. Hardened perception attracts repetition. She understands now why certain women appear endlessly blocked despite effort. They carry quiet bitterness they call realism. Realism hardens into limitation. She recalls how often she once said, I'll forgive, but I won't forget. Forgetting is not required. Release is. Memory without charge is harmless. Memory with charge becomes magnetism. She learns to bless situations she once resisted. Blessing is not approval, it is clearance. What is blessed moves on. Others begin to notice that she no longer speaks critically. Criticism had once felt intelligent. She now sees it was expensive. Every judgment narrowed her channel. She observes that when she releases resentment, energy returns. Fatigue lifts. Inspiration resumes. Forgiveness restores vitality. She understands that resentment toward institutions, systems, family, or fate operates the same as personal resentment. Law does not distinguish scale. Release must be complete. She no longer argues internally with the past. The past cannot be corrected through analysis. It dissolves through release. She practices inward correction when old thoughts arise. She does not dramatize them. She simply replaces them. Replacement is faster than removal. She learns that resentment is addictive because it feels righteous. Righteousness without order is ruinous. Order restores peace. Others sense that she is lighter. Conversations with her feel easier. Cooperation increases. Resistance dissolves. She understands that resentment delays more than it destroys. It stretches lessons across years. Release compresses time. She carries quiet acknowledgments rather than rehearsed affirmations. When resentment stirs, she recalls inwardly, I release and I move. I choose flow over memory. My good comes through clarity. These are decisions, not sentiments. She learns that forgiveness is not an event. It is a posture. A posture maintained keeps the path clear. She recognizes now how many years she once lost reliving what had already passed. Those years taught her. They need not repeat. By mastering this fifth discipline, she saves another decade. She no longer carries weight that does not belong to her future. Those who observe her say she is gracious. She knows she is efficient. Release restores motion. She learns next that expectation governs duration and that many women do not fail because they lack faith, but because they expect struggle as part of the process. They believe good must arrive slowly, with difficulty, and only after exhaustion proves worthiness. The spiritually prosperous woman sees that this belief alone can consume decades. Expectation sets the pace. She remembers how she once assumed that anything worthwhile required strain. When things moved easily, she distrusted them. Ease felt undeserved. Difficulty felt familiar. Familiarity is not truth. It is habit. She notices that her former life unfolded in long cycles of effort, followed by short relief. She mistook this for normal progress. It was merely expectation fulfilled. She understands now that law does not require struggle. It responds to assumption. What is assumed to be difficult becomes so. What is assumed to arrive under grace moves without resistance. She begins to examine how she speaks of time. She once said, "It takes years. Nothing happens quickly. I'm used to waiting." These were not observations, they were instructions. She learns to expect movement without urgency. Urgency is distrust in timing. Calm expectation accelerates arrival. She understands that expectation is not impatience. Impatience demands. Expectation allows. She recalls many years spent bracing herself for delay. She did not realize she was preparing for it. Preparation attracts. She now prepares for order. She expects alignment. She does not count obstacles. She counts direction. Others notice that things seem to fall into place around her. They say she is fortunate. She knows she simply stopped expecting resistance. She learns that the body responds to expectation as clearly as circumstance. When she expected fatigue, it appeared. When she expected strength, it followed. She no longer tells stories of long struggle. Stories rehearse duration. She tells fewer stories now. She understands that every phrase about time is a seed. She plants carefully. She practices expecting results without anxiety. Anxiety prolongs. Trust shortens. She learns that many women lose 20 years. Believing delay proves seriousness. Delay proves only expectation. She corrects expectation quietly. She does not fight old beliefs. She replaces them. When tempted to expect hardship, she recalls inwardly, "My good moves swiftly and surely. I expect ease without apology. Time serves order." These are recalibrations. She observes that life rearranges when expectation changes. People respond faster. Decisions finalize sooner. Paths clear. She understands that expectation is the silent partner in every outcome. Change the partner, change the result. She no longer fears ease. Ease is alignment, recognized. By mastering this sixth discipline, she saves another decade. She no longer spends years waiting for what could arrive now. Those who observe her say she is ahead of her time. She knows she simply stopped delaying herself. Expectation governs speed. She learns last that unity within herself determines authority without her, and that division is the quiet reason many women undo their own good. They speak one way and act another. They desire one thing and live as though expecting another. The spiritually prosperous woman understands that life responds most fully to those who are not divided. Unity is power stabilized. She remembers years when she spoke affirmations while behaving in contradiction. She declared trust, yet acted from fear. She spoke of abundance while preparing for loss. She did not see the conflict. Law saw it clearly and waited. Division delays manifestation more surely than doubt. She learns that agreement between word, thought, and action creates velocity. When all move in one direction, life responds swiftly. When they pull apart, progress slows without explanation. She begins to examine her daily conduct, not with judgment, but with curiosity. She asks whether her actions agree with what she has spoken. Correction follows awareness naturally. She understands that small contradictions matter. Locking doors while declaring safety, hoarding while declaring supply, apologizing while declaring worth. These habits feel prudent. They are mixed signals. She does not condemn herself for past inconsistency. Condemnation multiplies division. She corrects gently and proceeds. She notices that when her conduct aligns, peace replaces effort. Decisions require less thought. Movement feels natural. Others sense integrity without being told. Integrity is unity perceived. She no longer overstates belief. She lives it quietly. Quiet alignment speaks louder than declaration. She understands that many women lose 30 years living in partial agreement. They want change but behave as if waiting for permission. Permission never arrives. She stops waiting. She lives as one who expects agreement to be honored. She learns that unity produces authority without force. Life cooperates when signals are clear. She recalls times when she nearly reached her good but retreated at the threshold through habit. Habit dissolved when alignment was maintained. She practices consistency not through rigidity, but awareness. Awareness corrects gently. She understands now that her presence carries weight. Rooms settle when she enters, conversations steady. This is not personality, it is coherence. She no longer explains herself. Explanation introduces doubt. Unity requires no defense. She carries one final inward acknowledgement, not spoken often, but lived daily. I am of one mind. This is not affirmation. It is posture. She sees now how all 7 disciplines converge here. Speech, non-resistance, clear desire, obedience, release, expectation, and unity form a single current. When united, they save lifetimes. She realizes that most women do not lack faith, they lack agreement. Agreement restores power instantly. She understands that had she learned this earlier, she might have saved 30 years of correction. But she does not regret the path. She values mastery more than speed. Those who meet her later say she seems carried by life. She knows she is simply aligned with it. She no longer struggles to be supported. Support follows coherence. This is how years are saved. Not through striving, but through unity. Life responds fully to those who speak, expect, act, and trust as one. And so she is prosperous, not by chance, but by agreement. She arrives, at last, at a place of quiet certainty, where effort is no longer mistaken for faith, and struggle is no longer mistaken for growth. Looking back, she sees how many years were spent learning through collision what could have been learned through alignment. She does not regret those years, yet she no longer worships hardship as teacher. Law is the greater instructor, and it teaches gently when listened to early. She understands now that life was never withholding, it was reflecting. Each delay, each repetition, each obstruction was a faithful mirror of instruction given often unconsciously, often casually, often without awareness. Life did not mishear her. It heard her exactly. This understanding releases her from blame. Blame was another costly habit, another way of lingering in the past. Correction is power. Once corrected, there is no need to revisit what no longer governs. Law moves forward instantly when agreement is restored. She sees how most women spend years improving circumstances while neglecting the agreement beneath them. They change places, relationships, methods, and routines, yet keep the same inner contracts. Time passes, scenery changes, but outcomes repeat. This is not fate, it is consistency. The spiritually prosperous woman breaks this pattern not through rebellion, but through comprehension. She learns that life is not something to endure, but something to instruct. Instruction begins inwardly and moves outward without announcement. She notices that once the 7 disciplines are lived together, life feels astonishingly cooperative. Doors open before strain arises. Help arrives before desperation. Insight precedes confusion. Others call this favor. She calls it order restored. She remembers the earlier version of herself who believed progress required proving worthiness. She no longer bargains with life. Worthiness is not negotiated. It is assumed. Assumption is law accepted. She observes that many women pray sincerely, yet live cautiously, as though prayer were a request rather than an instruction. Prayer spoken without alignment is merely sound. Prayer lived is command. She no longer prays for relief from conditions. She aligns before conditions appear. Prevention is mastery. Looking outward, she sees how differently she is now perceived. People no longer sense urgency around her. They sense assurance. They do not feel compelled to rescue, advise, or manage her affairs. They trust her judgment. Trust attracts opportunity. She understands that people respond not to words alone, but to coherence. Coherence feels safe. Safety invites cooperation. She notices that children respond to her differently. They do not mirror anxiety. They mirror expectation. Without being taught, they absorb order. This alone alters generations. She understands now how entire family lines remain bound to repetition, simply because no one interrupted the unconscious agreements carried forward through language, tone, and expectation. One woman who learns law changes more than her own life. She changes inheritance. She sees that the years she saved were not saved by speed, but by elimination. She eliminated unnecessary struggle, unnecessary explanation, unnecessary delay, unnecessary resistance. When these fall away, time collapses. She realizes that time itself is responsive. Time stretches under strain and compresses under clarity. Those who struggle feel life is long and heavy. Those aligned feel it is swift and generous. She understands why some people seem to accomplish in a decade what others attempt across a lifetime. They are not favored. They are undivided. She sees now that life never required her exhaustion. Exhaustion was self-appointed. Rest in alignment accomplishes more than effort in resistance. She carries forward no desire to convince others. Conviction invites curiosity without persuasion. Those ready will recognize truth by resonance, not argument. She understands that teaching given too early sounds like theory. Teaching given after readiness sounds like memory recovered. She knows that many who hear these ideas will nod and continue unchanged. Law does not compel, it waits. Experience teaches eventually what instruction offered freely. She does not grieve this. She understands that readiness cannot be forced. Seeds sprout when soil allows. She recalls the many years she spent waiting for certainty before acting. She now knows that certainty follows obedience, not the reverse. Obedience clarifies. She understands that fear once masqueraded as caution. Caution that contradicts guidance is fear refined. She no longer refines fear. She lives now without inner argument. Argument was costly. Silence resolved more than discussion ever did. She sees that each of the 7 disciplines was not separate, but successive refinements of agreement. Speech aligned thought. Non-resistance aligned perception. Clear desire aligned direction. Obedience aligned movement. Forgiveness aligned flow. Expectation aligned time. Unity aligned authority. Together, they formed a single current. In that current, effort is reduced, clarity increased, and life reorganized. She understands now why some people speak truth for years without demonstration. Truth spoken without embodiment remains philosophy. Truth lived becomes law. She does not wait to feel powerful. Power follows coherence. She understands that had she learned these disciplines earlier, she might have saved 30 years. But she also understands that learning them now saves the rest of her life. She sees women ahead of her, still struggling. She does not judge them. Judgment reintroduces division. She simply lives, visibly aligned. Visibility teaches more than instruction. She notices that when she enters a room, tension dissolves slightly. People breathe easier. This is not charisma. It is coherence sensed. She understands that her calm is not indifference. It is faith matured. She recognizes that faith without strain is the truest faith. Strain reveals resistance. She no longer fears mistakes. Mistakes corrected quickly cost little. Delay costs much. She sees that life is generous when not opposed. Opposition creates friction. Friction consumes years. She reflects on the promise once offered that years could be saved. She knows now it was not exaggeration. It was arithmetic. Remove resistance. Remove repetition. Remove repetition. Remove years. 10 years are lost through careless speech. 10 years are lost through argument with appearances. 10 years are lost through divided desire and delayed obedience. Remove these, and life advances swiftly. She does not hurry now. Hurrying belonged to distrust. She moves steadily, certain that alignment accelerates without pressure. She understands that she is not finished learning. Learning continues, but without punishment. Law instructs gently when honored. She carries no sense of arrival, only agreement maintained. She knows that the woman described at the beginning, the one quietly carried by life, was never special. She was simply aligned. Now she is that woman, not because life chose her, but because she chose agreement, and life, faithful and exact, responded.